And we're back. Bits and Bytes podcast. We're back in the studio. Excited to be here. I'm with my man Joey.
Hey.
What's up, Joey? We got some special guests with us today.
So excited to be back with episode 21, gentlemen. Can you believe it?
2-1. Who do we got with us, Joey?
Well, along with you and I, we have Byteworks' own all things SLED master, Adam Kingery.
Love it.
But perhaps most importantly today, we have Xan Stevenson, head of partner sales at Meter. And Matt, I'm excited to say, we're talking about rethinking how networks are bought, built, managed, and refreshed.
Wow. I'm going to say this, and some people might be like, whoa, what is this guy on? But that is super, super exciting because we often around here refer to the network as the fourth utility, right? So you got power, gas, and what's the fourth? Water, right? And that fourth one being the network. Businesses nowadays cannot perform without the network. Show me one. I can't think of one. So I'm excited to think about this and talk about this because it's reshaping the way that we're approaching this. So before we jump into that, I want to just kind of frame up the Bits and Bytes podcast. We've been putting this on to lean into innovation and outcomes that are coming into the market and really reframing things, as well as talking about common situations, issues that our customers are facing. A lot of times we have customers on here, but really it's to give back and to talk about things that folks are experiencing out there in the market, because reality is that if somebody's facing a challenge or somebody's driving a solution, others are interested in as well. So guys, thanks for being here with us today. This is our 21st episode. I can't believe that. Thinking back on our first one and how far this has come.
We've come a long way, baby. We've come a long way.
We have come a long way. But it's always fun. So conversational. Let's jump into things. So Xan, Adam, I know this is a topic that you guys have been spending a lot of time around, but before we really get into the meat of it, I think we should take a step back and discuss the network, the traditional, what is the network and how are people used to thinking and approaching networking as it is today? So,
yeah, that's a really good tee up because I've known Xan for, gosh, it's probably going on 15, 17, 18 years now.
We're not that old.
In the network,
5.
the network has changed a lot in the last 15 to 20 years. I mean, I remember I was on the collab side of the house working for Nortel, and this was like at the beginning of voice over IP, right? Back then, phone systems were the size of rooms, like classrooms. They were giant. They had all this physical hardware in them that were cards, and they plugged all these analog circuits into things, and they would power these schools and businesses and things like that. And over time, everything started to migrate from these giant room-based systems down to servers. And then from physical servers to virtual servers. So now we're putting all sorts of things. And I think about the network kind of the same way, Xan, right? I mean, in the beginning, we had everything was wired back then, right? This was in the earlier days. Wireless was kind of a nice to have, but not ubiquitous, especially in public sector, right?
It wasn't often trusted right away. Because it wasn't consistent. And so you want to get the same speeds and whatnot. So I remember always plugging in when I got into work, my laptop to make sure that I had consistent speeds. And
yeah. And you think about devices too, right? I mean, back then, in the early days, we had like Blackberries, right? So we weren't doing any high performance computing on our devices back then, right? Yeah. So in the wireless that we were doing was like checking email and sending messages back and forth and stuff. Things were a lot slower. Back then it was like 1 gig uplinks on network switches, right? And like 100 meg to the desktop. And now things are M-gig to ports and stuff like that. So a lot has changed. Xan, you've been in the space a while. What was your perspective on kind of when you were getting started?
Yeah, Xan, give us a little bit of background on yourself here too. I think there's a lot of merit to that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, so Adam and I met when I was a little startup called Meraki back in the day. Feels like a long time ago, but really goes by in a blink when I think about it. But that was when cloud managed networking was just really a vision, right? And we had no idea what it could bring, but I think we all saw its potential to really help manage networks more effectively and deal with this problem statement, which really was bring your own device, and how do you effectively manage the wireless environment, right? I think everyone was thinking through like what's going to be the next best thing and way to do that, not only in the enterprise, but in K-12 and across multiple mid-market companies. And so I started at Meraki late 2011. Adam and I met shortly thereafter, and we're like, man, we think this thing has a lot of potential, especially for the public sector space. And then I stayed at Cisco for well on another 10 or so years, 10 and a half years. Most recently had a stint at Juniper and saw what a combination of what AI, cloud, and analytics can really bring to the equation. And have since moved over to Meter for that next, I would say, next big chapter in networking. So had the privilege to work at some great companies and kind of seeing these trends and how networking is trying to stay ahead of the curve of what our customers need. But it's also been fun to see kind of the echo of also the things we're just trying to solve across multiple, I would say, OEMs in the space. So that's why I'm excited about Meter. It's like, it's not only solving what some may classify as like the big blue problem. Was like, no, like this is systemic in the industry. And how can thinking about networking as a utility change the game?
Yeah. Adam, you hit on something that really triggered something for me as far as the need of having the cabling and the infrastructure all there. Now, still to some degree, still required to get to the access points and other parts of the infrastructure. But like, even with wireless, the infrastructure is not going away. The hardware is not going away. There's still the need for hardware, maybe not down to plugging in to a specific port or cable to your laptop, essentially, but there are still infrastructure pieces that need to be there. And this is still a major investment of just to keep up with how fast it's growing. It's still a major investment of corporations, businesses, and government entities, right?
Yeah, that's a really valid point. For all these years, right? And I work a lot with school districts and city county governments. They all are very real estate heavy, right? They have lots of buildings. Schools have lots of, school districts have a lot of schools, right? They've got a board office. They've got probably 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and a high school, right? Or at any scale, right? If you're Fulton County schools, it could be hundreds of schools. If you're Gwinnett, it could be a few hundred schools, right? But at the end of the day, public sector is very real estate heavy. And the way that we've always done it, right, is either you're building a new building, there's construction blueprints, drawings, things like that. There is I use the word data center loosely because most school data centers are not really data centers as you would call them, but they're a main connection closet, right? And then they'll have other closets out there in these schools to get networking closer to the classrooms and things like that. But what we would do is we would literally a lot of times go and walk these buildings if they were already constructed today, or go through blueprints, and we would come up with a bill of materials, right? And I was waiting for Xan to smile at me here because, I mean, it's like, all right, what core switch are we using, right? What chassis switch is that, right? How many power supplies do we need? How many network modules do we need? How many line cards do we need? What sort of uplinks do we need? What licensing? Do we need layer 3 licensing? Do we need this? Do we need that? Do we need all these things, right? How many optics do we need? A bill of materials just for the core switch could be 50 line items. And I'm not making things up, right? It could be 50 line items. And then even once we get out to the closets near the classrooms, it's like, all right, well, what rack mount switch are we using? Do we need 24, 48 ports? What's the uplink to the core? What power supplies? How much PoE do we need to provide an access point? How much do we need to supply to cameras? Do we need MGig? Are we going faster than a gig these days? What licensing do we need? Are we doing layer 3 out at the edge? So that might be a 10 line BOM just for each switch, right? It's a lot of stuff. And in my earlier career, Xan, back in the day, I'm a little embarrassed to admit it, but I shouldn't be. Sometimes I got the power cables wrong, right? I'm like, I thought it was a NEMA 515, but it was a cabinet jumper, like a switch. And the thing about it is the network does not work well if you can't plug it into electricity. And that's one of the neat things that Meter does is they provide the PDUs for a number of different reasons, but that gets us around these 50-page line items.
Well, it sounds so messy and complicated. And that enough is intimidating enough for somebody to be inactive.
It also sounds expensive. And so when I'm thinking about it, Adam, on all of that can't be purchased at once, right? There's budgets, there's limitations. Like, what does that look like from a thought process of approach? It feels like you might have to settle for something today while you upgrade something else, or just traditionally within your network, right?
I saw what you did there and I love it. I'm for it. So a lot of times, right, we'll go out, we'll walk these schools, we'll put together a 100-page quote, right, that outlines everything that they're going to need or that they think they're going to need. Think being the operative word here. Today, the way that things work in a traditional fashion is when a school district buys an infrastructure, that's gotta get them done for like 5 to 8 years, sometimes 10.
Band-Aid.
And it's freaking impossible to know what networks are going to require 10 years from now. And oh, by the way,
Sure.
this network that we're guessing at is anywhere on a elementary school basis, probably $250,000 and up. And they've got to pay for that right now. And oh, by the way, if they don't have the $250,000 right now, I know we said we wanted to do MGig on access layer ports, but we might have to tailor that back to 1 gig. And I know that we were talking about 10 gig, but we might need to stack these switches and only go 2 up to the uplink from there. So there's a lot of guesswork and it's a lot of expense up front.
Yeah. And Adam, I think these are like very real world problems.
Yeah.
But you haven't even added, I think, what is probably one of the most critical things that Meter solves, and like add redundancy to that equation. Now you're increasing your cost, and you're alluding to it there, right? Not only redundancy to get it to a great outcome, but also project planning to the next 3 to 5 years. I mean, there are going to be things that are unpredictable, or maybe the school actually, in the case of the public sector, they get some bond money to go buy that new security system. They're like, oh, wait, that's going to be hard because I need 20% more ports to do it. Wouldn't it be nice if their networking vendor, Meter, was focusing on the outcome for that customer? And the good news is we are, right? So we think about the space. We're going to ship as many hardware components and switches and routers and APs and name the thing, patch cables, so that customer meets an outcome that Meter defines, and that's uptime.
I want to pause on that for a second because you hit a really valid point there, right? New things happen all the time. Schools specifically, school safety, physical security, and cameras, right? It's wild. When I was in school, we didn't even have cameras.
Oh, yeah.
There were no cameras. Thank God in some cases for that. But in other ways, from a school safety perspective, in the last probably 5 years, Xan, right? I mean, schools have gone from having a handful of cameras to like they have almost every foot of the school covered in cameras now, right? And they couldn't have planned for that 5 years ago from a switching perspective, right? So some of these use cases are driving rapid network expansion that was unexpected, not to mention traffic, right? Because these cameras are HD quality cameras, right? That are transmitting lots of data across the network. And oh, by the way, in the traditional model, upgrading from 1 gig access to multi-gig access and 10 gig to 25 gig uplinks, those optics are insanely expensive to do. And then, oh, by the way, I might need to upgrade my internet connection, right? And so now I got to upgrade my firewall, and now I got to upgrade the connections on those firewalls and all these things, right, Xan?
Yeah. The reality is, if you guys are a fan of Ray Kurzweil, we are all subject to the law of accelerating returns. So not only do you have technology needs because of security in the schools, which I think we all are nostalgic about a day when we didn't have to worry as much about that, but that is a stark reality we have to plan for our customers, right? And also with accelerating returns, bringing faster speeds and feeds, more demands on workloads, name the thing. Technology needs to and has to accelerate for our customers. And the good news for Meter is that we're thinking about that as the way that we go to market and work with our customers to go through lifecycle management as a key part of the service instead of going through a hardware resale attrition cycle. Like, once again, Meter's an outcome-based sale. It's generally all done via subscription. We do have customers who consume as in a CapEx model as well. But in doing so, we are guaranteeing an outcome. And that means that new hardware, as technology accelerates, more ports as they need it for the same cost. You're basically getting predictable cost, but a predictable outcome with Meter, which is why it is the next great utility, right?
Yeah, Adam, you made me think about this when we're thinking about the network as people understood it, how it became, and evolved. and then we're going to start talking about the future of the network, which in itself we could talk about, but it seems like a challenge, and that's a challenge for every one of the individuals that's responsible for it. Like, how can you predict what you're going to need in 5 years when, if we look back 5 years, it was very different?
Well, that's where the whole future proofing concept comes in, right? So could you go into a little bit about that? And I'm going to go off script. You always expect a wild card with me, okay? So I'm thinking about the operational impact on IT teams, right? How do they feel when you guys come in? What responsibilities shift to you guys? What stays with the customer? And how much visibility do the IT teams retain?
Yeah, it is. The good news is it's a flexible model. So I like to put the easy analogy, like 2 hands on the wheel, 1 hand, no hand for meter, right? So in the case of some customers, we work with some large hedge fund financial entities that they're like, we are going to be hands-on in the network where we're not letting go of anything, but we love, the key components of lifecycle management with meter, you guys refreshing hardware as part of the service, the support, and maybe we can lean on you guys for triage and escalations and bug fixes and things, which we're going to continue to do for a customer like that. There are other customers that say, I have an IT team, yeah, and I want to keep that person focused on the network. They're not going to totally lend a blind eye, but guess what? This is a K-12 school. They have like 5 other things they need to be doing every day. It'd be really nice if you guys can keep an eye on things and help us, perhaps manage the network, provision the network in certain cases, troubleshoot, and be a part of the team, right? We definitely do that. And there is that kind of 2 hands on the wheel. They're like, I don't care how it works, just make it work. And call me later, right? And perhaps that, that person, they have an IT team, that's focused on their core campus, but all the remote sites, it's just not manageable, right? There are a lot of different situations where they need to take a more proactive approach. So we go through a project planning cycle with our partner, with you guys, also with the customer to say, what lane are we in and when do we need to be in it? So we have a successful outcome. And so I think the shift is, and more than a lot of people start working with me, it's like, oh, this is a much more, I would say, if you want to call it an intimate relationship with my networking provider. It's not a, hey, we sell you the box, we come back in 5 years and ask for a refresh and a license. It's like, we're trying to be in touch with you from a customer success perspective, a sales perspective, and thinking about the outcome over, not only 5 years, but the next decade and more, and interacting with you on a quarterly, if not more basis, right? So a little bit of an expansion of your question, but there are a few models that we know customers want to sometimes be really involved and sometimes not at all. And so we're going to meet them where they are.
So I'm a really simple person. So, concepts need to be, dumbed down for me to really kind of land on where we're at here.
Me too.
And I think what you guys are doing is really interesting from a co-management perspective, mainly because selfishly, my clientele is stretched very thin, right? Generally speaking, they'll have maybe a team, they'll have a core team at a board office, for example, and then they'll have entry-level techs, sometimes better than entry-level techs at each of the schools, like kind of managing what's going on, right? But everybody's got 50 things to do, and people get sick, people go on vacation. In public sector, I probably shouldn't say this out loud, public sector a lot of times does really great training so that their people leave and go work for the private sector and make 2 or 3 times what they were making at a school district. When you have a partner like Meter that can help co-manage things, that can level out the peaks and valleys, right, into something a little more manageable for school districts and some of the folks that I work with. So to me, that was really fascinating, is that you guys can be very hands-on, you can be very hands-off, but the thing that most of the folks that I work with want is they want to make sure that they have control and can make changes whenever they want, however they want. But also, I shouldn't say that this is going away, traditional tack in a sense, kind of going away, right? Where, having been in the space for 20 years, when something breaks, you pick up the phone and call 1-800-Cisco, Aruba, Juniper, whoever, and you spend the first 5 minutes going through what your contract number is, who you are as a customer, the second 20 minutes going through what your network looks like and all of that. And, from there, after 45 minutes on the phone, you're actually getting to why your network's down and some of those things, and you'll get there.
Yeah,
Things are changing from what I've seen with you guys and how you do that. Xan, can you tell me a little bit about command and
absolutely. Yeah, well, there are three core components what we're solving for there. Number one is a proactive support model. So to your point, like we're not waiting for the attack case. Like we're monitoring the network. We're trying to resolve issues and use the network and the autonomous command piece behind it to help solve it before it becomes an issue. I'll talk more about command in a second. But I think number two, the power of vertical integration in the networking stack. So once again, having come from the Meraki world, integrating into Cisco and also Mist, integrating into Juniper and Juniper now integrating to HPE. The reality is you have some very talented teams that are compartmentalized across these business units. And now you have, perhaps two sales teams with different Salesforce instances that are calling on a customer and perhaps creating some chaos. You have three support teams monitoring multiple product lines. That cost and complexity of doing business and resolving issues across these different areas that have been basically pulled together through acquisition, it's a pain that gets basically pushed to the channel and gets pushed to the customer. I live in that world in now two different companies. And I think we just kind of looked at it as like, well, like that's just how we're going to do things. Meter is approaching this as we're building everything that we go to market with, and we're going to support it proactively as one unit. And that creates speed and aligned interests internally for us, which I think is huge because that's really felt in the channel and felt with our customers. Command, as kind of the third key post of this, is when we think about what Marvis and what that whole piece of the network of break fix and mean time to resolution improvement. That is I think a key differentiator that they came to market with about a decade ago. We're now taking the next step to say, what if the network could think about who you are, understand your persona, build software for you, and also heal the network on top of that. So we're trying to be at the bleeding edge of autonomous to not only solve for support cases, but also really build a network experience around who you are in that organization so you can overall, affect it, in a more powerful way. So it's that next thought process of like, what can the cloud do plus AI plus, a generative UI all coming together.
Bleeding edge of autonomous. That is a beautiful. Somebody put that on a bumper sticker. I want to slap that on my Telluride. That is awesome.
I think that scares the crap out of a lot of people too, though, Xan, which is why I want to kind of pause on that and put it in reverse and back up a little bit and kind of dig a little deeper on that. So what you guys are doing is very interesting there. And I've seen command, and I know that the goal is to get to autonomous networks where they're self-healing, they kind of self-manage, and they self-secure, they can fix things on their own. But with what you guys are doing, it's almost like a small language model that is built in your UI. It's not like they're going out to the public internet and open AI and doing all these things. Inside of command and your network and your stack, basically what you guys have created is an agent, if you will, that knows everything about Meter from an enterprise networking perspective and a security perspective, right? So you could talk to it like I'm talking to Joey and saying, tell me a little bit more about your Telluride, and in the leather interior and the adjustable suspension and, how often you washed it and all these things, right? That you would have a, 150 page user manual to go through. It's like, oh crap, how do I turn on the, windshield wipers?
Sure.
Oh, it does it automatically.
Sure.
It does it automatically when it's rain sensing and stuff like that. This, you can actually, instead of thumbing through a book or going through manuals or Google searching things online, with command, you can actually talk to it and it knows everything about how things should be done. And not only that, it can actually walk you through how to do it, test it to make sure it works, and then you can deploy it from there. And oh, by the way, I would imagine that there's auditing built into this so that if it causes problems down the line, everybody knows kind of what happened, who changed it, what, when, where, why, and you can roll back whatever you need to, and it gets better over time.
Which is always huge about having, the history of, what happened, why and when, to be able to, have that documented. So it's basically a knowledgeable TAC agent at your disposal right there to, without spending the first 40 minutes of, informing them of what's going on, or what your environment looks like.
Yeah, it's going to say things like, hey, do you want me to make this change? I'm noticing XYZ in the network. And some customers, they're going to say, yeah, just, you don't even have to ask, just go do it. Right. Others want that first line of like, I want to say yes to any and all action, which makes sense, I think, depending on what environment you're in. And then other things like, hey, create an SSID for me that changes the password every 12 hours. Like, hey, what do I need to do in my network? Okay, here's your custom software. This is how you do it. Do you want me to build this? Yes or no? So yes. Okay. On we go. But it is like you're, once again, small language model. You said it, Adam. It's absolutely right. We're not basically plugging this into a public API and going out to another cloud. This is all built around meter networks.
Awesome. I think that's super interesting. And then, I think of like when I've seen Command, it's almost like Meraki on steroids in a lot of ways, to me, from what I've seen. And what I mean by that is like, in a traditional networking sense, without a dashboard, you might have multiple dashboards, right? So like for your switch network, you might have one management interface. For your wireless infrastructure, you might have a different interface. For your security stuff, you might have a third interface. And you can't see anything all together. Where inside of Command, you can actually see, multiple orgs, multiple buildings, the full stack all in one place, and connectivity from end to end, right? In one of the demos that I saw, you pulled up an end user and showed like, I'll say Adam's MacBook Pro, for example, right? But how many times do network admins and stuff get a call like, I can't connect to the internet?
All the time.
I can't connect to the internet. Oh, great. That does me absolutely no good. But if you could search my MacBook Pro, because that's what I'm on, and you could literally see what my MacBook Pro had done and what my experience had been, what I had connected to, what the pathway was like, what congestion might have been in the way, it really like changes the game. And I know that you were saying a lot of this can be done on the fly, but even thinking about it in a more traditional sense, a lot more information is there to not only help you on the front end, but even on the back end, kind of do a post-mortem as to how can we fix this so that this doesn't become an issue for anybody moving forward.
Yeah. I want to address what you mentioned about like autonomous in this equation. I think intimidating our customers and also our partners. I think when I was on site with for your guys' a customer event recently, I used the analogy of, the railroad and how people were really intimidated by what the railroad meant for America, in the 1800s. But if you then fast forward to now the superhighway, and now we think about how autonomous cars are coming into the equation and autonomous trucks getting products from place to place. Really, this is an up-leveling of what technology can do, and it's allowing people to take on more advanced jobs, right? So I think it up-levels people's capabilities in general. It's not a replacement of a job. It is hey, let's go do more dynamic things. Let's take on bigger projects. Let's take your company or your school to the next level, right? It's, I think, a dynamic shift in the market, but one that, once again, accelerating returns. We're in this moment of the network demanding more. The network needs to automate more so that people can do more. Really, that's where we are.
I would ask the question, how important is the network at that point, right? And we all know the answer to that, so to your point, having that level of consistency, having that level of dependability, and how much is put onto it, it's critical. It's a utility, right? So
when you brought up something else there, Xan, that I find particularly interesting, and I read a lot of industry stuff, and I'm sure you do as well. This isn't necessarily a replacement for people, but I read a stat somewhere that said at least 40% of like network administrators and systems admins are going to be retiring over the next 5 years.
wow.
So we're in like a giant shift of people that have largely been in this space for the last 20 years and seen all of this change in networking and largely do things the way they're comfortable with, to now we're getting a complete refresh, and it's young people that are coming out of college that are managing these new networks and doing things, and they do things differently. Are you seeing the same stuff out there?
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I think the shift in where talent is, either retiring or doing other things. And then also you have, like you said, a young workforce that's coming in and perhaps just wants to interact in a different way. And I think they are thinking about progress in an organization. And this, I think, enables that next generation to come up and be super effective and ramp on really quickly. And also, if someone's saying, man, I'm going to lose 30% of my staff, what do I do? Right? It's like, we're going to be right there to help them navigate that in both cases or some combination thereof. And I think when we think about the wider, channel community, the same thing applies, right? Like you have folks that have been in the industry a long time, perhaps they have a key part of their staff retiring. It's like, how do we come in and help partners, meet the demands of their customers, right? Like that too is going to be more and more important over time. So yeah, it's showing up in a lot of different ways. We had a health clinic that has 500 sites. They're like, we have to redo all of our sites. We're coming off of Cisco EA. We love the meter model, but also half our staff's retiring. Like, how the heck are we going to do this? Right. And they were kind of in that moment of, do we continue with Cisco and the hardware resale model, or do we go to an outcome-based service that's lifecycle managed? And this is a key component of our team, and they can navigate the retirement in our staff. Like, those are real world problems. And the good news, I think we're right place, right time with this solution in a lot of cases.
Yeah, and I want to talk about the offering and what that looks like here in a second. The one thing I did want to note, and I think we've acknowledged it several times that uh like the employees that are in the IT industry, their roles 10 years ago are drastically different from a responsibility standpoint than they are now. And they continue to keep growing. And, as we get into the world of leveraging agents to do more for us, that's a lot onto the IT's plate to make sure that those agents are working, that they're supported, that everything's secure, and more and more and more. Just one example of, this future evolution of the job description for IT individuals. So I think the ability to what Byteworks has done consistently is being there as their consultant, as their support partner for all of their needs within their infrastructure, and the ability to lean on technology and innovation to continue and consistently empower them more is essential. There's going to be so much more put onto their plates. So if we can give them the ability to leverage and have visibility, have consistency, and take that inconsistency off their plate, it just means so much more to them to be able to continue to go and where they're going, because it's not going away. I heard this one assessment of AI, and one of the things that came out of the study was it said AI is nothing without a human need. There has to be a human saying, I need this problem solved, or I need this outcome. Like, you can have all these capabilities in the world, but if there's not that need for it, then, it's not. So there's always going to be somebody in charge, responsible for overseeing and implementing and integrating and fixing and everything else from that perspective. And that seat at the table has gotten drastically bigger and bigger to every function in the organization as we move. So I just wanted to call that out because I kept hearing the role's not going away, and it's not. It's evolving. And so the more that you can leverage innovation, technology, and continue down that path to do more and evolve with it, the better. So let's dig in here. We talked about several of these challenges just through the nature of the progression of the network, but let's talk about the meter solution in itself. Why is meter different? What are some of the thought processes around meter that might have to change?
So I think the market is very much primed and trained to refresh just wireless, or refresh just security, or refresh just switching, and even PDUs. Like, these are all kind of separate parts of the stack that customers have developed a behavior to maybe pick and choose 2 or 3 vendors, because, they have their own security team. The security team wants this, and the mobility team wants that, and, LAN team wants this. So I think the biggest change in philosophy is, what are the benefits of vertical integration? Because we're not selling just meter wireless here. We are selling a end-to-end solution, including cellular networks if needed in that customer, that is a full end-to-end offer that creates an outcome-based sale, right? And for some, that's a huge paradigm shift. Like, forget about the consumption model and, this being a subscription in some cases, if that's what a customer wants. It's, okay, I'm gone from having 3 to 4 different GUIs, operating, across multiple OEMs. I've always done it that way. And, you know, what's interesting is that some customers are so married to that they'll accept the complexity as it is and work across all these different functions and support teams. Um, it's shocking to me the amount of accepted, I say time invested in that kind of model versus a meter model. How much more efficient we can make that customer. So to me, it makes perfect sense. For some customers, that is a huge change in how they've been doing business and how they've been operating IT. Now, when we peel it back and start to talk about existing customer use cases, what this really means in terms of their costs, what it means in terms of their efficiency, what it means in terms of being, an autonomous network, um, you really can't get there without an end-to-end solution like this, right? And so it is, yes, a change, but one that really allows them to get back, man, this so much time in their day and so much, I would say, money back into other parts of their IT budget, right? They're gonna have to be, paying licensing across, 10 different, components of their network. It's like, okay, one cost, everything I'm gonna need end to end. It's really elegant when you think about it. But as you can guess, because the way they've been consuming IT up to this point, that's a big change.
It's a big shift.
So I love to use this example. I think there's an apple in the back of this thing. There is. I think of meters kind of like the Apple, and I mean this in a good way. Years ago, I used to sell cell phones when I was in college. I worked for a reseller that sold multiple vendors. So we sold Nextel, we sold Sprint before they merged. They both sucked. But what's funny, putting two companies that sucked together didn't make them any better. We sold T-Mobile. Back then, T-Mobile was still largely in Europe. They weren't really that big here in the US yet. We had AT&T, we had Singular, we had all the providers. And it didn't really matter which one you wanted. We could sell you any of them. They all had some of the same phones, some different phones. Like it didn't matter. And what we did back then was you had to buy the phone. Like you bought the phone. I don't own this phone. Apple owns this phone. I pay $20 a month. I have a device that I can download every app that I want to and connect to whatever I want to. When the technology changes in 2 years, they give me a new phone. And I keep moving on. And it supports the latest wireless. It supports the latest stuff. It connects to everything that I need it to. And in my mind, that's kind of like what Meter has done here is they've taken the I don't ever worry about, will my phone support that? I don't ever worry about that because it supports anything I need it to. It's new. It's always new. And it always supports what I need. And I just pay a monthly cost for that forever, and I get what I need out of it.
Yep. Oh, it's a great analogy. That is a lot of what we're trying to accomplish. And it just speeds things up so much, right? I think overall, our customers need speed and capacity, and they need to push the responsibility to the networking OEM to grow. And I think it's been misaligned interests up to this point before a meter model, right? You have these very large companies, which they're great companies. Like I said, I've worked for a couple of them. These are hardware resale models that are focused on going through that attrition cycle, right? And they expect every 5 years you're coming back and refreshing that hardware and having to pay the piper, right? In meter model, it's very much aligned to what you're talking about Apple. It's like you're going to get the latest and greatest fixed cost on you go, right?
I want to double click on something you said there, Xan, because I think it's important to discuss. You mentioned the hardware piece and planned. I don't know that it's necessarily planned obsolescence. It's just technology moves so fast that there's obsolescence in the switching world, probably every 5 years. In the wireless world, every 2.5 years, maybe now, and that might speed up faster than that. But what we're seeing a lot of the big companies do now is they're moving a lot of their premium features to more expensive subscriptions. So they're no longer giving you anything more than just the base functionality within what you're purchasing. You have to buy a subscription that gets you those things. And with meter, it's not that way, right?
Yeah, it's an all-in model, right? And the good news is, yeah, you're not going to have, oh, you want AI? That's going to cost. This is a different tier now. Oh, you want SD-WAN? Oh, that's a different tier. That's not how meter works. It's all in, all features unlocked. The key differentiator, I think, too, for meter is that we can do rack and stack and install for customers. So we don't think about tiering in terms of features. We only have two offers. One includes labor and installation if you want us to do that. But it's very simple. Once again, you basically have two different SKUs you can choose from, and it gets you all product features regardless of which one you choose.
It's kind of like you said, two hands on the wheel, one hand on the wheel, no hands on the wheel, right? Like, yeah, what do you want?
Yeah.
But I think the other thing you said there that's really fascinating to me is earlier in the discussion, I was like, when we traditionally built out a bill of materials or a quote for a customer to refresh their network, it probably could have been 5, 6, 7 pages of stuff. And with meter, it's literally one line item.
That's right.
Well, I mean, it's crazy. And
Right?
I could sense that once we start getting into the cost of these elements, right? Because, as we talked about all the different elements of the infrastructure, from the firewall to the server to the APs to et cetera, there's significant costs in those. And we talked about that, hey, we would do those over time, probably not at the same time. Well, if we're doing those all at once at a lower cost, that seems very appealing. I think more in the organization would be open to that than just the IT staff, because the IT staff says, hey, we want to make sure that we're putting the right products in place to support the needs of the organization. Others are saying we only got X amount of budget and this is what we're going to do. And so there's constraints and give and takes around that. So from what I was hearing, from a standpoint of, ability of cost, ability of budgeting, it sounds relatively straightforward as well from that standpoint, and very appealing to others within the organization, I would think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's been interesting is I've moved to the meter world. I'm not going to, you guys, know all the other OEMs, so I won't say which one just released this. I mean, that's like everywhere you turn, there's a new data center switch for AI clusters and all this kind of stuff, right? Our hardware lead, he goes to Taiwan, basically twice a month. He knows exactly how much those competitors' specs are and exactly how much it costs to build. Key example, the highest end data center switch you can buy today, it costs about $13,000 to build. It is a $250,000 list on the market. $250,000. So look, I don't fault these companies, but that's how they built their business. Meter is a ARR focused services business. We care about keeping customers for 10 plus years. We're basically bundling in the hardware as a part of the service and not focused on the hardware margin. That is such a fundamental shift to how we built our own P&L to deliver a great service and a great ROI for the customer and predictable revenue for us too, right? So it allows us to have aligned interests and not focusing on inflating hardware costs. And that's just the way the networking business has been built. Like I said, no fault to them, but that's when you shift that alignment, it's super powerful.
Yeah, I have to imagine that with such a major shift, there's a lot of skepticism, of, wait, what? Does this really work? Does it do what you say it's going to do? I'd love to hear a little bit of experiences that we've had either firsthand or, Xan, that you're seeing out there once we dig into this and start having those conversations. Like, what is the reactions and how do we overcome those?
Yeah. Yeah. So good news is we're over 500 plus customers, thousands of network sites deployed today. We have customers that have over 90 million square feet deployed with meter. We have others that have over 1,000 sites. It's in financial services. It's public. It's no longer private anymore. We just launched our public announcement to partner with the San Antonio Spurs. So we're getting to the arena space now. Like, this model scales to multiple locations, millions of square feet, and very large environments. So once again, we're building great networking hardware with enterprise level chipsets behind them. And once again, that vertical integration allows us to scale into complex environments and give, once again, great customer experiences. So if you're listening to this and you're like, this is too good to be true, talk to this team, talk to me. We'll get you in touch with customers to talk about their experience. And, of course, there's going to be skepticism. I get it.
Yeah.
It's something that, any new vendor to the space, you're wondering, okay, how early am I? Right. And yes, we know that adoption curve takes time, but also it's in a customer's benefit just at least see what else is out there. Right.
I think, Xan, it's funny, we talk about budgets and we talk about support and we talk about all these things. It's wild in the traditional world because, we've been doing business with customers for decades or more sometimes. They're on like their second or third refresh of hardware. And when you kind of go upstream to the manufacturer that they bought that from, they can run you a report of everything that they've bought over the history of them being a customer. And it's amazing how much data is like really dirty within that. And then it's like, we need a renewal quote for support and things like that. And what's the life cycle like? When do we need to plan for this? When do we plan for that? And I mean, this is like it's an every year thing, right? Where, we've got to go out to the customers. We've got to get access to their management interfaces and literally look at what the hardware is, what's in production, what has been retired, what licensing is on it, what is on it's a huge operational lift to keep up with traditional networks.
Don't you love LDOS reports, Adam? Are those the best thing?
There's thousands of line items, right? And it's like, what's still in production? Like, what are we using today?
Yeah, exactly.
I thought they were accurate.
Yeah, I love the sales campaigns when you think you have the right LDOS data and it's not even accurate. It's the best. But forget about
Whatever happens.
No one cares about sales people having pain, but let's talk about the customer. You're right. Like they should know what they have. But guess what? Wouldn't it be nice if we could tell them accurately, but also be a project management partner in just upgrading it, right?
Well, you don't even need to know it anymore, right? Because it's taken care of. That's kind of the beautiful thing about it, right? We go from, well, hold on, let me run a report. And then as a salesperson, I've got to like review that report and make sure that I understand it, because you don't look at this stuff every day, right? You're looking at it once a year or once every, twice a year for a client, maybe, because they buy equipment at different times, right? They didn't buy everything all at once. They opened a new site that was 6 switches and 30 access points and this many of that. So it's like the co-term dates don't line up on any of this. It's like, can I line it up? Like, oh, I'm sorry, but now this is a subscription model, so I can't actually.
You're making my page turtles a little bit.
Oh, and my favorite, and I came from that world of like, oh, well, this license is weighted this way, this license is weighted that way, and this therefore is
have to extend it to you.
this site has a weighted average. So it in principle, it was a good idea. But as we can tell, like that model, it's created a lot of pain in its own way. What was a good idea, not a great idea. And we're coming at this and saying, hey, let's refresh the network, not worry about the individual components within it. It's a shift. And it's like, people are like, why didn't we do this to begin with? And it's like, well, perhaps we should have. But
I mean, I used to like get new customers by doing a assessment of their maintenance contracts and helping them right size their maintenance contracts. And you'd be surprised, Xan, and this happened with voice over IP when I was doing this as well. Like customers were paying for like PRIs, they were paying for licensing for users, because what happens is they would have new people get hired and they wouldn't turn off the old stuff. So they were paying for like 1,000 users when they only had like 600 users, and they were paying for 5 PRIs when they only needed 3 PRIs. Customers were paying for support and maintenance on switches that were retired like a year or 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And they didn't realize it. And it's just because they went to a vendor and said, hey, quote me a renewal. And the vendor went and pulled that LDOS report and quoted everything on it.
Yeah.
Like,
Till somebody says, hey, what is this over here? And they're like, wait, what?
until I come in and I'm like, hold on, let's actually take a look at what's actually in production and all that. And we'll save you $100,000 a year. I mean, there were instances where we would save customers over $100,000 a year on maintenance just because And no fault of them. They've got a million things to do. They're just trying to keep the lights on and the end users happy. But this completely flips that over and makes it not a conversation anymore.
Really, really good conversation here. I appreciate it. I do want to, acknowledge this is a major shift. It's not for everybody in the place that they're in right now, right? I mean, Xan, I know that you're like, hey, it is for everybody. But like, at the end of the day, different customers are in different places of their journey. And, we being the consultant, like to say that, hey, we're in the journey with you and we're going to help you get to where you need to go. So, I think bringing this to the forefront, bringing this to the awareness is important for us to do. I really enjoyed the conversation. Adam, I own my phone. I hate to admit that.
Hey, yeah, let me just close with this on my end. I think you're absolutely right. It's not for everybody right now. I think that what we're seeing is that the industry is kind of pushing this way, and it's flattery to be copied, right? I think overall, customers demanding this. I think Meter's the first to the market with it. If you're like, you know what, like, we'll learn more, but I just refreshed my core campus. Could be Meter in your remote sites. It also could be Meter Cellular. Meter Cellular, we are finding if you need 3 carriers and an as a service model, predictable, not only Wi-Fi but also cell coverage, that could be a bump in the wire to your existing network and just a Meter Cellular network on its own, right? So there are ways we can find to work with customers in mixed environments. It doesn't always happen, but something to consider where we could be on the fringes to start before we're owning the whole network.
And I also want to say one thing. I think you're selling yourself short at Meter, because Meter would never slow down their service so you'll buy more of their product. And I cannot say the same thing for Apple. And mic drop there.
You had met Joey. He may not be here for much longer.
He disappeared. I don't know. After that episode,
Yeah.
hopped in the back of a van. Is ever said, man.
Well, I really appreciate the conversation. I think it poured light onto a lot of interesting topics. I know that we've gotten the question multiple times around essentially, network as a service, or, what does this look like? And we appreciate our partnership with Meter. We look forward to delivering to the customers that need the solution. And Xan, thank you so much for your time. Adam, thank you so much for your time. This is Bits and Bytes Podcast, episode 21. Take care.
Thanks, guys.